Page 106, Country Dance. Now we're going to start mixing the rhythm up a little bit with 16th notes, but if you'll just stick with a one-E and a throughout, you can figure it out no matter what it is. Really, you can. At the beginning, in the right hand, I mean, they give you the patterns up above. I like to use the music. I'm going to stick with the right hand. The key is in G major, and you're starting in G position. You're not going to stay there, but you're starting there. So right now, let's just focus on the first couple of measures. It's one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a. So it's at the beginning, it's one E and a, two. The one is the first note, and two is the next B. So it's one E and a, two E and a, one. Remember, one and two and. If I leave out the 16th notes, it would be one and two and one and two and. Those are eighth notes. I just left out the 16th notes. Again, one and two and one and two and. Just eighth notes. One and two. On the 16th notes, they start on an and, but it's two and a. One E and a. One E and a. One E and a. Two E and a. One E and a. Two and a. The last measure you got to cross over to here into this position. And on top of that, they give you a tied note. Well, let's take out the tie. Forget the tie for a minute. Just play all the notes. Let's do the last two measures of the first line. It's here, one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a. Like so. Again, second measure, one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a. And once you get that, put the tie in. You can think playing the second note, just hang on to the first one instead. So the second measure, one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a, one E and a. And that's the hardest rhythm on here. There's some other things I'll point out shortly, but if you can get that first line, you've got the hardest part. So the whole first line is one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and. That's it. And then this rhythm is all over the place. It's not the only rhythm, but this rhythm is all over the place. You go down to the third line in the last two measures, or the last one measure actually. You get one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a. One E and a, two. Forget the articulation. Let's just get the notes. One E and a, two E and a. Last line. Again, forget the articulation. Let's just get the notes and the rhythms. Well, first off, I need to adjust the fingering a little bit. I don't like their fingering in the last line on page 106. Look at the first measure. They're saying a 4. Now, staccatos, you can get away with that. But I still don't like it. It's unnecessary. So I'm going to recommend you do a 4, 1. Put a 1 on that A, not a 2. And then you can get the D more easily. Even with staccatos, this makes it easier for you to do it without looking at the keyboard. Because you want to be able to do it without looking at the keyboard eventually. And anywhere else you get this pattern, put a 1 on that note. So it's here on that. Like that on the fingering. Back to the rhythm. One E and a, two E and a, one. Now again, they've tied that D over. So temporarily take out that tie. Erase, 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 erase. And play all the notes. So the whole last line, no articulation, just play the notes in the rhythm. It's here. One E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a, one E and a, two E and a. Now you may have to practice those 16th notes to get the notes to work it up to that speed. So just take it really slow on the second and third measure. Just take it really slow. And at first, when you're trying to work out notes, forget the rhythm. Just get the notes. So it's just like you see here and you're in this position, you're doing fine. And then you get to the last measure. You got to bring your fourth finger down to that C. So you're in this position. We just changed hand positions, and this is one way of doing it. And then when you get the notes, then you can go back and try and get in the rhythm. On the last two measures, it's 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Then when you get all that, put that tie back in, because that is important. So the whole last line, no articulation, just play the notes and the rhythms. It's here. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Then when you can get that, I'm rushing through this, but you're going to, hopefully you'll practice this. You'll play it over and over and over and you'll practice it. You'll get it. Then you can put the articulation back in. It's just staccatos on the first couple of notes. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E. Now the top of page 7 is the same as what we just did. So on the second measure of 107, make sure you play that A with a thumb, not second finger. So you're in position to do the 16th notes. Then in the second measure, the second line, you're starting a new phrase. You can lift up. It's the same as it is at the beginning. Till we get down to the bottom, the last line on page 107. Let's look at this. Starting out here, it's 1 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. And we got this scale going up. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 E and a, 2. And you got to put in the articulation. See, I'm just taking these things a step at a time. First get the notes and the fingering. Then go back and try and get the rhythm. And when you get that, you go back and put in the articulation. And when you get that, you go back and put in the dynamics. So I'm just adding one thing at a time. Now I know there are people who believe you ought to be able to do all of that at the same time. Well, more power to them. That doesn't work for me, and I don't teach that way. Just one thing at a time is fine. And that's the right hand. Let's look at the left hand. At the beginning on page 106, you simply have the G and the D. And they're tied, so you're going to hold them down forever, so it's okay. And they're tied all over the place. Isn't this fun? Oh boy, this is about all we get. Until you get down to the last line on page 107. That went fast. And then we get the single notes. Couple little tricky spots in putting the hands together. I'll just point them out briefly. On page 106, going from the last measure of the third line into the last line, when both hands are playing, you're here, going into the last line. The left hand is tied, you don't play it, just the right hand. And then going into the next measure, the right hand is tied, so you don't play it, just the left hand. So it comes on beat 1, so it's 1 E and a. So they're not playing at exactly the same time, and that happens on page 107 also, so look out for that. So don't play them both at the same time there. It's no. Now they're showing a pedaling at the end. Again, I don't understand why. It's totally unnecessary, and frankly, I think it's out of character. I'm against using a pedal on that. If you're not going to use it on the piece, don't use it at the end. What's the point? And the staccatos anyway, no pedal on this, just no. Dynamics, you do the dynamics. They apply to the melody. At the beginning, it's going to be loud. And you're going to stay more or less loud through the whole page. And you can get a little softer and louder as you go down. You got to feel the melody. You don't just stay in one monotone all the time. And then when you get to top of page 7, it's soft. And the second line on 107, you see the second measure, you're loud again. It's like it was at the beginning. Third line, last measure, now you're soft. It's like an echo. And then the last line, you're going to start out sort of loud. Actually, you could start out sort of soft, because you were soft. You just come up a little bit, because this gives you more room to grow, because at the end of the line you want to be loud. So we have more room to get loud. So here, a little louder, and then you're growing up. You got that hairpin there, you're growing up. And the last note is where you're headed. Remember, music wants to flow. We want to go someplace. And in this case, it's the last note. I'm here, I am here type thing is where it is. When we do the play with me, I'm going to leave out the dynamics. I'm just going to play the notes because you could do the dynamics. I want to check and make sure you have the notes and the rhythm correctly. I don't think putting the hands together will be much of a problem because the left hand isn't doing a whole lot. It's not helping at all. So watch it. Now I'd like to play this with you. I'll give us 4 counts, 4 quarter notes, and then we'll come in, but we're going to go really slow. I put the metronome on 8th notes, so it's beating 1 and 2 and. So again, this is the same speed as what we were doing in the previous videos. So the 16th notes are 1 E and 2 E and so they're going to move pretty good. So practice this and get it up to that speed, and then try it with me. Play it with me one hand at a time if you have to for a while. So go ahead and start out in G position here, and I'll give us 4 quarter notes. Count in. 1 and 2 and 3 E and go E and 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and and